30 minutes after my daughter told me to step outside because it was a real family photo. My phone buzzed in my purse. The message was from her mother-in-law. They're arguing. What did you do? I remember staring at the screen in the dark of my car, thinking how strange it was to be asked that. Earlier that evening, I had been standing beside my daughter at her 5-year anniversary celebration just outside Austin. It was more than a party. There were investors there. People connected to my son-in-law Callum's software company. I knew it mattered to them that everything looked polished and stable. My name is Marjorie Ellison. I am 61 years old, and I have spent most of my life working in corporate risk management. So I understand how appearances and numbers move together. The photographer gathered us near the edge of the patio where the light was even and the breeze kept lifting the tablecloths just slightly. Briar stood between Callum and his mother. I stepped in on her other side. I thought that was where I belonged. We had been there for several minutes, shifting, waiting for everyone to settle. Then Briar turned toward me and said, clearly enough for people nearby to hear, "Mom, could you step outside? This is for real family." She did not whisper it. She did not look unsure. Callum gave a small nod, as if it made sense. His mother stayed where she was. One of the investors from Houston glanced at me, then away. I felt the pause in the group. That moment when everyone pretends not to notice. I stepped back without arguing. I told myself it was not the place to correct her. I have made that choice before. To stay quiet in public and sort things out later. In the past few years, I had watched Briar slowly describe her life as something she built alone. I let it pass because I did not want to embarrass her. I see now that silence can look like agreement. I walked toward the parking area while the photo was taken without me. The crunch of the driveway gravel felt like bone breaking under my heels, behind me. The warm glow of the patio a party I had paid for looked like a movie set where I'd been fired mid-scene. The laughter of the investors drifted toward the parking lot, hollow and expensive, mocking the silence of my own car as I prepared to pull the plug. I sat in my car with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, waiting for the feeling in my chest to settle. When the message came from her mother-in-law, asking what I had done, I understood that something had already started to unravel. I had not raised my voice or made a scene. I had only stepped outside. The question was, what else I was about to step out of. 5 years earlier, everything had already started to tilt, though none of us admitted it out loud. Callum's first funding round collapsed 2 weeks before closing. I still remember Briar calling me late at night. Her voice was steady, but too steady. "We're fine," she insisted. "It's just delayed." I've worked in risk long enough to recognize when numbers don't support optimism. They had bought a house in South Austin at the height of the market. The mortgage was high, structured around projected income from the startup. When the funding failed, that projection disappeared. Callum and I sat across from each other at my kitchen table a few days later. He pushed a folder toward me. "We can restructure," he explained. "The bank just needs proof of stable supplemental support." "Support from whom?" I asked. He hesitated. Briar answered instead. "From you, Mom. Just temporarily." I didn't react right away. I reviewed their statements, their burn rate, the mortgage terms. Then I offered a formal loan of $120,000, documented properly. We signed a promissory note with a repayment schedule and a recorded second position lien, not because I wanted leverage, but because I wanted reality on paper. I agreed to cover 40% of the monthly mortgage through escrow while they stabilized. It was structured, legal, and time-bound. "This isn't indefinite," I clarified. "We'll reassess in a year." Callum nodded. "That's more than fair." Briar squeezed my hand. "We won't need it that long." But a year passed, then another. Each time I asked about reducing support, Briar would say, "Just one more quarter." It's almost there. I required access to updates and monthly summaries. Not to control them, but to understand what I was financing. At some point, oversight began to feel to her like interference. I could see it in the way she stiffened when I asked about cash flow. We're adults. Mom, she told me once, you don't need to review everything. I do if I'm underwriting it, I replied quietly. That was the part we never resolved. I thought I was protecting them. She started to believe I was hovering. I sat in my car with the engine off and the windows cracked just enough to let the warm air move through. The music from the patio sounded distant now, like it belonged to someone else's evening. In the past few months, I had noticed small shifts. Briar introducing Callum as the one who built everything. Briar laughing with friends and saying, we're finally independent now. Her mother-in-law once remarked, within my hearing, when a woman marries, her priorities change. I let those moments pass at the time. Tonight, they lined up clearly. This wasn't about a photograph. It was about removing me from the narrative. I unlocked my phone and opened my email first. I sent a direct message to the event lead. As the card holder on file for tonight's bar, I'm placing a hard cap on the premium liquor tab at 9 o'clock. After that, keep service to beer, wine, and standard pours only. I didn't need to explain. In the world of high-end catering, the person with the signature is the only voice that matters. I watched the rhythm change, servers regrouping, a manager moving fast. The small kind of pivot that makes a party feel cheaper without anyone saying why. Next, I logged into the emergency account. It was under my name. Briar had access because I granted it. I transferred the remaining balance back into my primary account. Not a dramatic amount, but enough to matter if someone was counting on it. Then I drafted one more message, this one to Briar and Callum together. As outlined in our original agreement, I'll be ending my mortgage subsidy in 30 days. This gives you time to adjust. I reread it once to be sure it was clear and neutral. No anger, no commentary, just documentation. I pressed send and set the phone face down on the passenger seat. I didn't feel triumphant. My thumb hovered over the button long enough to feel the urge to rescue them. Then I remembered what she'd called real family and pressed anyway. I felt steady. For the first time in years. I wasn't managing their risk. I was managing my own boundaries. I didn't go back inside. But I heard enough later to understand how the evening shifted. The premium bar closed first. A server informed Briar that the upgraded package had been withdrawn. The basic service remained. But the optics changed. A few guests noticed. Investors always notice. Callum pulled the catering manager aside. I wasn't there, but I know his tone when he's under pressure. There must be a mistake. He told them. The authorization was revoked by the guarantor. The manager explained. We're adjusting accordingly. It wasn't dramatic, no scene, just a quiet downgrade. Later that night, one of the venture partners from Houston asked Callum to step away from the group. The question was simple. Are you personally buttoned up right now? No surprises, that could complicate the round, Callum replied. Yes, of course, because inconsistency during due diligence complicates timelines, the investor added. That was enough. Concern spreads faster than conflict. My phone rang before I reached the highway. Briar's name lit the screen. You embarrassed us, she began, her voice tight. In front of everyone, I stepped outside. I told her evenly, like you asked, that's not what I meant. You were clear. There was silence on the line. Then she lowered her voice. Investors were here. Mom, I'm aware. You could have talked to me first. We've talked before. She didn't respond to that. The dynamic had shifted without either of us raising our voices. For years, I absorbed the risk quietly. Tonight, I declined it. When I ended the call, I understood that the visible crack wasn't the bar service. It was the realization that their stability had conditions attached to it, and I had just enforced one of them. 2 weeks after the anniversary, Callum asked to meet me for coffee. He looked older than he had that night. Not physically, but in the way someone carries numbers in their head. They didn't pull out, Callum began, but they triggered an emergency forensic audit, and he looked older, the weight of a failed due diligence process pressing on his shoulders. They flagged the household exposure. The mortgage subsidy you provided wasn't the problem by itself. The problem was that the documents implied you two were independent when you weren't. That's a disclosure problem. I nodded. Not because I enjoyed it, because I understood it. They weren't offended that a parent helped. They were alarmed that your stability was presented as self-funded when it wasn't. When diligence finds one gap, they assume there are more. For how long, I asked. 90 days. They want expanded review. I nodded. That was predictable. They flagged household exposure. He continued. The loan. The mortgage structure. You disclosed it, I asked. I mentioned family support in early documents. He replied carefully, not the full breakdown. And the ongoing subsidy. He hesitated. I thought it ended. I let that sit. During due diligence, the investors' analysts had traced escrow payments and mapped personal liquidity against projected founder compensation. They determined the company's stability partially relied on household assumptions that weren't fully independent. They lowered the valuation. Callum added, We're accepting revised terms by how much, enough that I'm giving up roughly 25% of projected equity. He didn't blame me. He wasn't angry in the way Breyer had been. He was calculating. I didn't know it was still 40%. He admitted quietly. Breyer told me it was tapering. It wasn't. I replied. We agreed it would be temporary. It wasn't adjusted. That evening, Breyer called again. This time, her voice wasn't sharp. It was strained. You told him everything, she said. I gave him documentation, I answered. The same one you signed. You could have warned me. I did. Every quarter. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. Steady, but uneven. They think we misrepresented stability, she added finally. Did you? I asked. She didn't respond. Trust doesn't fracture loudly. It shifts. Quietly. When numbers stop matching narratives, 30 days passed, and the escrow transfer from my account stopped exactly as scheduled. Breyer called the morning the first full mortgage payment cleared without my portion. It's short, she began. Though she knew it wasn't, the payment feels different. It's the original amount, I reminded her. You're covering all of it now. There was a pause on her end, then a controlled exhale. We'll adjust. They did, within weeks. The second sport utility vehicle was listed for sale. Callum handled that conversation with me himself. We don't need two, he explained. It's practical. It's responsible, I replied. The country club membership was canceled quietly. Breyer mentioned that one with irritation she tried to hide. It wasn't essential. She said it was networking. Networking works better when it's sustainable. I answered. She didn't respond. Breyer returned to full-time marketing work at an agency she'd left 2 years earlier to focus on freelance branding projects. She called it temporary at first. It's just until the round closes, she told me. Work is never a step backward. I told her it's stability. Callum spoke to me once more that month. His tone had changed. I don't feel blindsided by you, he admitted. I feel like I wasn't fully informed. That's between you and Breyer. I said evenly. He agreed. Cash flow tightened, but nothing collapsed. Bills were paid. Adjustments were made. The lifestyle shifted from curated to practical. I didn't interfere or advise. I simply observed from a distance I hadn't allowed myself before. Independence looks different when it's funded entirely by your own decisions. I didn't hear about the arguments directly. News travels through tone before it travels through facts. Breyer's voice changed first. It lost its sharp edge and settled into something tired. One evening she called without preamble. We started counseling. She told me, with Callum, I asked, yes. It's not dramatic. It's just tense. Callum had been under pressure from the board after the valuation reset. An independent financial review meant weekly reporting and tighter oversight. Founder autonomy, he explained once, feels different when someone else signs off on every projection. They're watching everything, Breyer admitted. Expenses, compensation, even our personal disclosures. That's standard after renegotiation, I replied. It feels like punishment. It's accountability, I answered quietly. There was a pause. I could picture her pacing. He thinks I should have told him the subsidy hadn't changed. You think you shouldn't have. I thought it didn't matter. It mattered to him. That was the part she struggled with, not the money. But the perception of trust. A mutual acquaintance later mentioned they'd seen Breyer leaving a counseling office near downtown. I didn't comment. I didn't offer to fix anything. That restraint wasn't easy. For years. I stepped in before tension could harden. I did feel guilt. I won't pretend I didn't. There were nights I considered wiring one more transfer just to quiet the pressure. But stepping back isn't the same as walking away. Sometimes it's the only way to let something stand on its own. Breyer asked to meet me on a Tuesday afternoon. Just us. She clarified. No Callum. We sat across from each other at a quiet cafe near her office. She looked composed, but there was strain under it. I didn't comment on that. I didn't mean it like that, she began. Like what I asked evenly. Like you're not family. I was trying to manage optics. Investors were there. It was strategic. But you said it loud enough for everyone to hear. I replied, including me. She looked down at her hands. I was under pressure. So was I. I answered, for 5 years. That landed. I didn't think you'd pull support over a sentence. She continued. It wasn't one sentence, I told her. It was years of revision. She frowned. Revision. You telling people you were independent while I was underwriting your mortgage? That wasn't fair. She pushed back. You insisted on oversight. You wanted visibility into everything. I did. I admitted, and that was my mistake too. I made it too easy for you. I stepped in before you had to adjust. She studied me for a moment, as if recalibrating. We're not asking for charity, she said carefully. I never offered charity, I replied. I offered structure. There was silence between us. Not hostile, but heavy. If assistance ever resumes, I continued, it will be different. She lifted her head. What does that mean? It means a written agreement with defined milestones, a clear timeline, full transparency between you and Callum, and no narrative distortion. I won't fund an illusion again. You're making this transactional, she said quietly. It always was, I answered. You just stopped acknowledging it. Her jaw tightened. Pride was still there, intact. So that's it, she asked. That's where I stand. We sat for a few more minutes, neither of us moving to soften the edges. I didn't offer comfort. She didn't ask for forgiveness. When she stood to leave, she paused. I don't know if we can go back, she said. We're not going back, I replied. We're deciding what forward looks like. She left without hugging me. I watched her walk out and understood that this wasn't about money anymore. It was about whether she wanted reconciliation or simply the stability she had grown used to. 6 months later, the company was still standing, but it looked different. Callum called one evening with an update. We closed the round. He told me, lower valuation than projected, but stable. How much lower, I asked. Enough that the board wanted more control, he replied. They're installing an independent chief financial officer, full oversight. That was the second structural shift. Founder authority narrowed. Compensation capped. Decisions reviewed. It's not personal, he added. It's governance. I understand. I told him. At home, their adjustments had settled into routine. The smaller budget was no longer temporary, it was normal. Breyer worked steady hours at the agency. She didn't talk about networking events anymore. The social circle thinned quietly when the club membership ended and the image softened. We met for lunch once a month now. Neutral places, measured conversations. I'm tired, she admitted during one of those lunches, but it's stable. Stable isn't a bad word, I replied. She nodded, not arguing. Their marriage didn't collapse, it tightened. Counseling continued. There was less performance, more negotiation. I noticed she didn't mention independence as often. As for me, I stopped structuring my life around their volatility. I joined a local advisory board. I booked a trip I'd postponed for years. I reviewed my own retirement projections instead of theirs. We weren't estranged. We weren't repaired. We were something quieter. When Breyer left the restaurant that afternoon, she squeezed my hand briefly. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't apology. It was acknowledgement. And for the first time in years, I wasn't financing the space between us. The next time we gathered, it was at Breyer's house on a Sunday afternoon. No investors, no curated guest list, just immediate family and a simple meal. The house felt smaller than it once had, though nothing about the square footage had changed. At some point, Callum's sister lifted her phone. "Let's get a picture," she suggested. There was a pause. Not long, but noticeable. Breyer looked at me. For a second, I saw the same hesitation from that night months earlier. Then she said, quietly but clearly, "Mom, come here." I stepped beside her. No one rearranged themselves. No one explained anything. We stood close enough that our shoulders touched. The photo was taken. It wasn't staged for press or investors. It was just a record of who was there. Later, as plates were being cleared, Callum approached me. "We're stable now," he told me. "Different, but stable." "I'm glad," I replied. Breyer joined us. I didn't understand what independence really meant. She admitted, "I thought it was about how things looked." "It's about what you can carry on your own," I said, "and knowing when help comes with terms." She nodded. There was no apology speech, no dramatic reconciliation, just a recognition that comfort and respect are not the same thing. Before we left, Callum asked, almost lightly, "What did you actually do that night I stopped financing the illusion?" I answered, "There's something important in that." I stepped back into the frame, but I didn't lean in this time. I stood straight, an independent pillar. I realized that night that you cannot buy a place at a table where you aren't respected. You can only build your own table and wait for them to realize they're hungry. If your children treated your support like an entitlement and your presence like an embarrassment, would you cut them off to save them? Or keep paying to keep the peace? Let me know in the comments.